don't be going in saying, can I have a job, bro? Like, because if you go in with, can I have a job, bro? They've had 30 of them that day and they don't care. You're just a number. But if you slide in that inbox in whatever way, whether it's DMs, whether it's email, whether it's a letter, and say, hey, I'm really excited about your journey. Your journey really inspires me as a young person. And I know this or this about your journey. And I'd love to buy you a coffee and talk to you for 15 minutes about how you got to where you got to. You've got a far greater chance of actually then building a long-standing relationship with that person.
If you're a musician, one of the hardest things to do in the music industry is actually make it. Or that seems to be the case where it's incredibly difficult to actually turn it into some kind of career or lifelong passion that's going to help you sustain yourself. And the reason why I say that is last month we decided to run an event that helps with exactly that, called Ladder, making it in the music industry. Now, when we ran that event, it turns out that I myself ended up meeting some really interesting people as well. One of the people that I met was a guy called Sound with Mike, or Mike Burgess. And that's exactly who I'm going to go and see today. And the reason why I'm going to go and see him today is last year I started a record label under the name of Coaction Records. Now, the point of Coaction Records was to talk about some of these ideas and concepts behind why we can make it in the music industry, or why we can find a self-sustaining career. And it turns out that Mike has done where I seem to have failed, and taken all of these bits and pieces and actually managed to compile them into one.
You got something in your tea? Possibly. It's not the end of the world. Probably had worse. So. Yeah. So I've been doing stuff in the industry for 15, 16 years now. So I'm 34, started at sort of 17. And yeah, I mean, it was one of those things like 17, 18, going out, being involved in nightlife, and pretty quickly wanting to be involved, not just as a customer, and wanting to kind of have that experience of how does this event work? How's it been put together? Logistically, you know, how does that kind of stuff work? Was working in a record shop, got to know one of the guys who used to come in and put the flyers on the counter for a certain party. That certain party was an event called Tangled. Tangled, as of this year, has been running for 25 years in Manchester. It's one of the oldest running events in the country. And I kind of was like, how do I get involved with this? So I started out giving out flyers aged 18 in return for free entry to the club. By the time I was 23, I was the operations manager, and I was essentially, I guess, in essence, a partner in the business. My career's generally moved in 5-year blocks, I tend to find, and had 5 years in the events world. Was making music, was always involved in music production. My school background is classical music, and then kind of from there, that's got me into electronic music. So we were making music, me and the guy that I worked with at the time, James. We had a music production alias called Heavy Feet. Heavy Feet then went on to do releasing music, mainly house music, kind of electronic dance music. We did that for 6 years, sort of 2007-ish to 2013 or thereabouts. Went all over the world as DJ and producers. Did business in most corners of the world.
So it's fair to say you've been busy.
Been doing a bit. Yeah. It's been a busy. You know, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? In this industry, we moan if we're busy, we moan if we're quiet. But being busy is always my preference. But yeah, so I guess that was 5 years of events, 5 years or thereabouts of being an active, you know, self-managed artist in the music industry, working with major labels, independent labels. DJing all over the place, and then from there managed other artists, managed songwriters, worked with top 10 acts, acts you've never heard of, acts you have heard of. Then started working for Six Music during that period as well. So I worked on Mary Ann Hobbs' show for about 8 or 9 months, doing some assistant production work when her regular AP was away or ill or whatever. So I kind of had 8, 9 months of working at Six.
The thing about your story that kind of fascinates me is the idea that, we talk about how everybody can follow their passion, because what most people do is they would get to that point and you would say, I want to be in dance music, right? But people get shut down straight away. It's a saturated industry. It's not possible. Like, you're absolutely crazy or off the rails for thinking that your life can be dedicated to this thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
The older generation saying, oh, that's all well and good, but what's paying your bills and things like that. But it seems that you kind of see things on the same wavelength with me in terms of, is the music industry as saturated as it's made out to be?
I think my take on it is the same as most industries. I mean, I know people that went to uni, got a law degree, went and did it, sort of started doing law qualifications. Maybe, I don't know anyone that's got the bar and didn't become a lawyer, but I know people that have got qualifications in law that didn't end up being lawyers. And that wasn't because they were necessarily bad lawyers, but it was just like they didn't know what an opportunity looked like, perhaps, and they didn't know how to open doors. They may have had the hardcore skill and the knowledge, but the ability to kind of open doors and to see what a good opportunity was in front of them, or maybe to go and determine what a good opportunity was, perhaps wasn't there. And I say this a lot, I think in any industry, whatever you do, you absolutely have to have a good understanding of what an opportunity is, and whether that's a bad opportunity or a good opportunity. I think it's very important as you go through life, as you go through any industry, or industries plural, is to be able to start to determine that is of added value to my life, or that is not going to add a huge amount of value. And I think that's kind of as black and white as it is. So going back to the original point of, is the music industry overly saturated? Yes, but no more overly saturated than the legal profession or the business, the world of business or the world of IT. We've probably got more people graduating in the world of IT and coding and that world, HTML development, now than we ever have.
I think the other thing that's changed so much, and I talked about it in a recent video, was about how communication and the open internet has literally, it's quite funny, because I think some people think we're living in the world of yesterday, say the 70s, the 60s, that's the world we're living in, but we could not be any further from that right now, because I mean, for example, when building everything that I've built, I'm now using social media to connect with people that, as you can see, it has a huge impact.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I guess from my perspective is, I say this quite publicly and quite openly, it's fairly unlikely I would be where I am without the internet. Like, I think if I hadn't have had access to MySpace, I hadn't have had access to Facebook in its early day, if I hadn't have had email communication, I wouldn't be where I am now. MySpace was a very useful platform in a way to be able to communicate with people that were far more experienced than I was, to be able to get immediate feedback on music production, on how to approach people, how not to approach people, whatever it was. That was an incredible platform to have available. I think possibly more so than Instant Messenger is now for people. I think the thing is a lot of young people now with Instant Messenger, they understand that using Instant Messenger to contact someone they don't know is somewhat a bit of a breach of privacy, or being a bit over familiar, or it's being a bit too overly personal. And I speak to a lot of young people that say, I couldn't possibly just like DM someone out of the blue, or particularly Facebook message them. Whereas MySpace, it was just like, well, this is new.
It was easier to do back in that day because it was exciting and new, and everybody wanted to talk to each other. Yeah. It's now kind of a different situation, because back in that day, it was new, so there wasn't as many people on it.
Yeah.
Whereas now everybody's on it, but people are scared to do it. Right? Would you say it's kind of like...
I think there's something in that, man. Anybody that I speak to, it's like, on the whole, I'm sure you'd agree, like, don't reach out cold on a reactive decision. Like, do your research. Like any business, do your due process, do your due diligence. Look at, is this person on Twitter? What can I glean from their tweets, their sense of humour, their political beliefs, their attitudes, values, and whatever else? What can we get from that? Okay, are they on LinkedIn? What can we get from that? It's about everybody now has to be a kind of private investigator before they do communication, and I think that's so important, because I do get this a lot where people reach out to me in a very like ad hoc, off the cuff way, and I'm like, you don't actually know anything about what I do. A lot of the young people that I work with, I'm kind of trying to get them into a point, particularly if they're doing anything around kind of like, if they're at higher education, or maybe they're kind of doing anything that's sort of project based. I get questions a lot around the kind of, how do I find work? How do I procure jobs as a freelancer? How do I maybe get a job? You know, those sort of questions come out of it because we're so connected, you know, on these things. It's that thing of like, we can't always do those things through this. We can't always, we can if you've got the experience and knowledge and the kind of know-how, but a lot of young people will go, well, how do I use my phone to get a job, get work experience, get something with somebody who's what seemingly miles ahead of you? And I sort of say, well, let's use the phone, or let's use the communication options you have to try and at least set up a conversation with that person. Can you go and interview them as part of a project you're doing at school or at uni or whatever it is? Don't be going in saying, can I have a job, bro? Like, because if you go in with, can I have a job, bro? They've had 30 of them that day and they don't care. You're just a number. But if you slide in that inbox in whatever way, whether it's DMs, whether it's email, whether it's a letter, and say, hey, I'm really excited about your journey. Your journey really inspires me as a young person, and I know this or this about your journey, and I'd love to buy you a coffee and talk to you for 15 minutes about how you got to where you got to. You've got a far greater chance of actually then building a long-standing relationship with that person and building actual rapport.
I'm going to drop a bit of a bomb in here.
Go on.
Are you ready for this?
Go for it.
So I am a very firm believer in law of attraction.
Okay, yeah.
What's your take on law of attraction? I appreciate, people know that I do go quite, I find it fascinating. And this is why, like, even just how this has come together.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You point in a direction, how many coincidences do we go through life? Because there's a ton of coincidences, you know. Like, actually, the person who's sat behind this camera right now, she will also say, and obviously say, I mean, I don't know if Libby wants to say, she's concentrating at the moment.
No, it's fine.
Things don't happen on a random, like, a lot of people think things happen randomly, random events, but actually if you start to realise, I think they're all connected. So and again, that's identifying opportunity.
Sure.
But I wanted to expand this, and then all of a sudden I bump into someone who's looking for exactly that
same kind of thing.
I've done a lot of talking there, but what's your take on law of attraction?
My take is, you know, what you put out is what you get back, and I think on the whole, like, if you put out a positive kind of community focused, give and take kind of attitude, you know, where it's an equally useful, beneficial relationship where, you know, I don't know, or you just put out, you put out value, you know, you put out value in content, I put out value in advice, whatever it is. Like, I believe that definitely comes back to you. Yeah, sure. I think but I feel it's very much like, what you put out is what you get back. If you put out positivity, if you put out a wealth of information and advice and help, it will be reciprocated in one way or another.
It's like a mirror. It's like a mirror. It's like playing a game of squash.
You see, the thing that fascinates me with someone like Mike Burgess is I do see things at a very wide, high-level angle and in a quite idealistic way. But there is something very grounded about Mike Burgess. There is something very natural about him. And yet, with everything he's been through and the life that he's lived, he has just gone from strength to strength to strength, gaining more insight and understanding into the music industry. People like that just give me faith in what... Oh God, we've got to keep that in. But the thing about Mike Burgess that's really, really important is he's just a nice guy. He's a genuine guy. He's a down-to-earth guy. He will help everybody who wants to be helped, and he will do it in the most honest way possible. And I think there's a lot to take from that.